The atmosphere inside the grand showroom of Logan Creations was nothing short of electric, vibrating with the kind of high-stakes anticipation that only a major international fashion launch can generate. Katie Logan had meticulously orchestrated every single detail of this monumental event, ensuring that the world's most influential fashion critics, international media outlets, and elite buyers were present to witness her latest triumph. The room was bathed in a sophisticated, ethereal glow, specifically designed to highlight the aesthetic of the new Hope by Logan brand. The air was thick and intoxicating, heavily perfumed with the delicate, alluring notes of the brand new fragrance that was poised to take the global market by storm. This was not merely a product launch, it was a definitive declaration of war against Forrester Creations. A glittering showcase of Katie's ruthless corporate acumen and her ability to build an empire from the ashes of family loyalty. At the very center of this dazzling spectacle stood Hope Logan Spencer, the undisputed crown jewel of Katie's rapidly expanding fashion conglomerate. Dressed in a breathtaking gown that perfectly captured her signature blend of ethereal grace and modern empowerment, Hope was the picture of a successful, independent woman who had finally stepped out of the suffocating shadows of her family's legacy. Yet, beneath the flawless makeup and the radiant smile she flashed for the relentless barrage of cameras, a tempest of conflicting emotions raged within her. The guilt of her shocking defection from Forrester Creations still gnawed at the edges of her conscience, compounded by the devastating reality that her mother, Brooke Logan Forrester, had officially disowned her. Despite the crushing weight of her fractured family, Hope desperately clung to the belief that this fragrance launch would validate her agonizing choices and solidify her status as a formidable force in the industry. Standing proudly beside Hope was the catalyst for this highly anticipated fragrance, the sensational French influencer and entrepreneur, Fanny Greyson. Fanny's journey to this glittering stage was a testament to the cutthroat nature of the Los Angeles fashion scene. After bringing her innovative perfume pitch to Steffi Forrester Finnegan at Forrester Creations, Fanny had been unceremoniously rejected, her vision dismissed by a company too distracted by its own internal chaos. Recognizing a golden opportunity, the ever-strategic Katie Logan had swooped in with lightning speed, poaching the rejected talent and offering Fanny a lucrative contract to collaborate directly with Hope. Now Fanny stood bathed in the flashbulbs of the international press, a living, breathing symbol of Logan Creations' ability to recognize and cultivate the brilliance that Forrester Creations had so foolishly discarded. As the presentation officially commenced, the synergy between Hope and Fanny was absolutely undeniable. They spoke eloquently about the inspiration behind the fragrance, weaving a captivating narrative of female empowerment, rebirth, and the courage to forge one's own destiny. The international press corps hung on their every word, their cameras flashing in a continuous, blinding rhythm that illuminated the showroom like a thunderstorm of adulation. Katie watched from the wings, a triumphant, predatory smile playing on her lips as she witnessed the flawless execution of her grand design. It appeared to be an absolute, unmitigated victory for the Spencer-Logan alliance, a moment of pure perfection that would cement Hope by Logan as an unstoppable juggernaut in the global market. Then, in a fraction of a second, the glittering illusion of perfection was violently shattered. The heavy, ornate doors at the back of the showroom swung open with a forceful, resounding thud that echoed over the ambient music and the chatter of the press. A collective gasp rippled through the sea of reporters and fashion elites as the crowd parted to reveal the unmistakable, imposing silhouette of Brooke Logan Forrester. She did not walk into the room. She marched, her posture rigid with an icy, calculated fury that instantly plummeted the temperature in the showroom. Dressed in a striking, crimson ensemble that commanded absolute attention, Brooke looked less like a mother attending her daughter's event and more like an avenging angel descending to deliver divine retribution. The murmurs of the press corps quickly escalated into a frantic, buzzing crescendo. Was this a surprise reconciliation? A planned publicity stunt to generate even more headlines? The answers became chillingly clear as Brooke continued her relentless march toward the illuminated stage. The tension in the room grew so thick it was suffocating. Katie's triumphant smile instantly vanished, replaced by a mask of horrified realization. On stage, Hope's radiant expression crumbled into a portrait of absolute terror, her heart plummeting into her stomach as she locked eyes with her mother. The maternal warmth that Hope had desperately craved was entirely absent, replaced by a cold, unyielding inferno of vindictive rage. Ignoring the frantic attempts of the security personnel to intercept her, Brooke effortlessly bypassed the velvet ropes and ascended the steps to the stage. She moved with a terrifying sense of purpose, snatching a microphone from a bewildered event coordinator before anyone could react. The showroom fell into a deathly, expectant silence, the only sound the rapid, mechanical clicking of camera shutters capturing every agonizing millisecond of the impending disaster. Brooke did not immediately address her sister or her daughter. Instead, she turned her piercing, venomous gaze directly onto the French sensation who had dared to cross the Forrester family. Brooke's voice, amplified by the state-of-the-art sound system, sliced through the heavy silence like a serrated blade. She publicly and viciously branded Fanny Greyson a corporate traitor, an opportunistic parasite who had shamelessly used the Forrester family's esteemed legacy as a mere stepping stone for her own selfish ambitions. With ruthless precision, Brooke detailed the behind-the-scenes corporate espionage, exposing to the international media exactly how Fanny had scurried to Logan Creations the moment Steffi had rightfully rejected her subpar pitch. Brooke painted a devastating portrait of Fanny, stripping away her glamorous facade and presenting her to the world as a disloyal pawn who possessed no genuine talent, only a desperate hunger for unearned fame. Fanny recoiled, her face draining of color as she stood paralyzed by the sheer brutality of the public humiliation. Having decimated Fanny's reputation in a matter of seconds, Brooke seamlessly pivoted her wrath toward the architect of this entire endeavor, her own sister. The decades of simmering Logan rivalry, the deep-seated resentments, and the recent, bitter betrayals all culminated in this catastrophic public arena. Brooke pointed an accusing finger at Katie, her voice trembling with a mixture of profound heartbreak and explosive anger. She publicly accused Katie of being a common thief, a corporate vulture who lacked the creative genius to build her own empire and instead resorted to cannibalizing the talent that Forrester Creations had painstakingly nurtured. Brooke spared no detail, exposing Katie's underhanded poaching tactics and framing her not as a visionary CEO, but as a vindictive, jealous sibling desperate to steal the spotlight. Katie, fiercely protective of her newly established empire and deeply offended by the public character assassination, immediately stepped forward to defend herself. The clash of the Logan Titans unfolded in real time before the hungry lenses of the global media. Katie attempted to project an aura of calm authority, demanding that Brooke step down and stop embarrassing herself, but Brooke was an unstoppable, destructive force of nature. The psychological warfare between the sisters was laid bare for the world to see, a tragic, ugly spectacle of familial bonds being incinerated on the altar of corporate supremacy. The flashing cameras captured every furious gesture, every tear of rage, documenting the absolute destruction of the Logan sisterhood. However, the most devastating, soul-crushing blow was yet to come. Having addressed the traitor and the thief, Brooke slowly turned her attention to the ultimate prize, the daughter who had broken her heart. The silence that fell over the stage was deafening, a suffocating vacuum that seemed to drain the oxygen from the room. Brooke stared at Hope, her eyes devoid of any maternal affection, reflecting only a profound, chilling disgust. When Brooke finally spoke, her words were not a shout, but a low, piercing condemnation that carried more destructive power than a physical strike. She questioned Hope's integrity, her morals, and the very foundation of her character. "You have lost your self-respect," Brooke's voice echoed through the sprawling showroom, the words hanging in the air like a toxic cloud. She publicly shamed Hope for aligning herself with a woman Brooke deemed a manipulative thief. Brooke systematically dismantled Hope's carefully constructed narrative of female empowerment and independence, framing her instead as a naive, corrupted, and deeply ungrateful child who had sold her family's legacy for a cheap logo and a fleeting moment of fame. To be humiliated by a rival is one thing, but to be publicly eviscerated by one's own mother, in front of the entire world, was a trauma of unimaginable proportions. The psychological weight of Brooke's public disownment crashed down upon Hope with the force of a collapsing building. The immense pressure she had been suppressing since her defection, the crushing guilt, and the desperate yearning for her mother's approval all violently collided in her mind. Hope's internal reality began to fracture. The dazzling lights of the showroom suddenly became blinding, searing into her retinas. The frantic whispers and gasps of the press corps warped into a deafening, unintelligible roar that echoed painfully in her ears. The glamorous, triumphant facade she had worn all evening completely disintegrated, replaced by genuine, uncontrollable medical terror. The onset of the panic attack was swift and merciless. Hope's chest tightened agonizingly, as if an invisible vice were crushing her lungs. She gasped desperately for air, but her throat felt entirely constricted. Her hands began to tremble violently, the microphone slipping from her grasp and hitting the floor with a jarring shriek of feedback. She stumbled backward, her eyes wide with sheer panic, searching the room for a lifeline, an anchor, a shred of maternal empathy. But when she looked at Brooke, she found only cold, unyielding judgment. The mother who had once been her fiercest protector had transformed into her ultimate destroyer. Recognizing that the situation was rapidly spiraling from a dramatic PR scandal into a catastrophic medical emergency, Katie completely abandoned her composed, professional CEO persona. Driven by a fierce, protective instinct for her niece, Katie physically inserted herself between Brooke and the hyperventilating Hope. Katie used her own body as a human shield, aggressively shoving Brooke backward to break her intense, venomous focus on the traumatized young woman. Get out! Katie screamed, her voice cracking with desperation and fury as she demanded that the paralyzed security guards finally intervene and remove her sister from the premises. The physical altercation between the two Logan matriarchs was the horrifying climax of the evening. Katie, fueled by adrenaline and protective rage, physically grappled with Brooke, pushing her toward the edge of the illuminated stage. The profound indignity of the two elegant, powerful women physically struggling in front of the international media was a scandal of epic proportions, a visual that would undoubtedly dominate the front pages of every tabloid and fashion magazine across the globe for months to come. The flashing cameras went into a frenzy, capturing the chaotic blur of designer gowns and furious expressions as the family tore itself apart. Behind the struggling sisters, the tragic culmination of the event unfolded. Unable to draw breath, her mind completely overwhelmed by the trauma of the public humiliation, Hope's knees finally buckled. She collapsed onto the hard surface of the stage floor, her glamorous gown pulling around her as she was entirely consumed by the severe panic attack. The cameras ruthlessly documented her fall, capturing every agonizing second of her physical and emotional breakdown. The launch event, which had been meticulously designed to celebrate beauty, innovation, and hope, had tragically devolved into a horrifying, voyeuristic spectacle of deep-seated family trauma. The immediate aftermath was a scene of absolute, unmitigated chaos. Security personnel finally swarmed the stage, physically separating the warring sisters and forming a protective barrier around the fallen designer. Medical personnel were frantically called, their urgent voices cutting through the cacophony of the room. The reporters, sensing the story of the decade, surged forward, shouting invasive questions and angling their lenses to get a clear shot of the unconscious Hope and the furious, unrepentant Brooke. The delicate, alluring scent of the new fragrance that still hung in the air was now permanently associated with the toxic, suffocating stench of the Logan family feud. The public relations nightmare for Logan Creations was instantaneous and catastrophic. How could Katie and Bill Spencer possibly market a perfume branded with the name Hope when the indelible image associated with the product was a young woman collapsing under the crushing weight of her own mother's public hatred? The narrative of empowerment had been entirely obliterated, replaced by a story of betrayal, psychological abuse, and family destruction. The financial implications for the newly established brand were incalculable, as investors and buyers watched the horrifying livestream in stunned disbelief. Katie's strategic masterstroke had been violently derailed, leaving her empire vulnerable and tainted by scandal. Beyond the corporate damage, the permanent emotional scar left on the family was the true tragedy of the night. This explosive confrontation marked the absolute point of no return. Brooke's calculated, public humiliation of Hope had severed the maternal bond in a profound, devastating way that no future apology or tearful reconciliation could ever fully repair. The legacy of this disastrous fragrance launch would haunt the Logan women forever, serving as a dark, tragic reminder that in the ruthless, uncompromising war for fashion supremacy, family is often the first and most devastating casualty. The glittering world of Los Angeles fashion had witnessed many scandals, but the night Brooke Logan destroyed her daughter's hope would be remembered as one of its darkest hours.